Last year, I bought and analyzed over 20 different cans of tuna for my deep dive into the topic, and ever since making that video, I've been mixing two different types of canned tuna for my tuna salad, solid albacore and chunk light or skipjack tuna. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 4 key variables that every can of tuna has so we can understand why certain cans have price and flavor differences and why I like the mix of these two for tuna salad. And 2, I'll break down the tuna salad framework, which I will use to make my own version of an upgraded deli-style tuna, which I'll turn into a classic tuna melt. As I covered in the deep dive video, there are 4 key variables to consider when shopping for canned tuna. First is the tuna species, of which there are 5 that are commercially fished for. Second is the texture, such as chunk versus solid or fillets. Third is the packing liquid, such as water versus oil. And fourth are added flavorings, things like salt, spices, vegetable broth, or other additions. And here are the variables of the 2 cans that I'm using. For the species, one can is albacore while the other is skipjack. For the texture, one is solid while the other is chunk, which are broken up into those little pieces. Both of these cans are packed in water, and then neither of them have added flavorings. These are both pretty common ones you'll find at the grocery store. And the reason why these have price and flavor differences comes down to that first variable, the tuna species. Skipjack tuna are a smaller, faster growing species which usually mature in a year or so and then can be harvested all year round. Albacore, on the other hand, is a larger and slower growing tuna that can take 5 to 6 years to mature and have a seasonal harvest, which is why they are typically more expensive at the store. Now, from a flavor perspective, skipjack tends to have a stronger fishy aroma, while albacore is significantly more mild. And in my testing for a tuna salad side by side, I found it was very easy to tell the difference between the two.
These are 100% different. Texture right away actually does come through.
Now, one of these cans is not inherently better or worse than the other. This is where you need to ask the question, what do you want your tuna salad to taste like? Most deli and sandwich spots are likely using a skipjack tuna because it's going to be lower cost. So if that's the kind of tuna you want to replicate, that's what I would look for. On the other hand, if you do not like the stronger kind of fishy aroma that canned skipjack tends to have, I would recommend using albacore instead, which allows those spices and aromatics you add to your tuna salad shine a lot more. Now, after making that deep dive video, I kind of just had a bunch of tuna, so naturally, I tried mixing them, and I found that I really like the balance between the two. I get some of that distinctive tuna aroma, which I actually kind of like, but not so much of it that it overpowers the aromatics and spices that I like to experiment with in my tuna salad when I'm making it at home. Because at its core, the tuna salad framework is really just made up of 4 key components. First is our tuna, which, as we've discussed, there's a large selection of cans that you can choose from. Second is a creamy binder. This is going to be the mayonnaise, and just like tuna, there is a whole range of mayonnaise options out there, but today I'm going to be using Duke's. Third, we have the aromatics. Celery and onion are typically pretty classic, but I'll be using a shallot today in place of the onion. And fourth, we have the flavor adjusters. These are things like salt, pickles, spices, relish, or whatever you happen to have laying around. And great tuna salad can be made with a whole variety of choices. So let's walk through how to make one version of just many and a tuna melt at home.
Okay, so let's make my version of a bolder tasting deli-style tuna salad. I'm gonna point out a couple of tips along the way. So first up, when it comes to the aromatics, I like chopping these as finely as possible, and we'll start that soon. And then, as we know, I'm gonna use 2 different types of canned tuna. Another little tip I'm gonna give is don't strain all the juice off immediately. I'm gonna talk about that. But let me chop up our celery, our shallot, and our dill pickle over here, and we'll get going. Now, this is all personal preference with how small or big you want to dice up all of your aromatics and vegetables. I definitely prefer mine to be on the smaller side. Now, this is not quite like a mince, but I would say this is a pretty small dice. And for me, I don't want it to be like crunchy and have like big chunks in there. Some of you may like that. I kind of like that style maybe in a chicken salad or something like that. where I'll cut the chicken into bigger cubes, maybe throw in some grapes or nuts where I do want some of that crunch, maybe some carrots and things of that nature. But for me, like a tuna salad, I kind of want it all to blend together and feel cohesive from a textural standpoint. And then additionally, when you do chop up your aromatics and vegetables finer, you're actually going to crush more of those cells that are going to release those kind of aroma compounds. So it will taste a little more intensely, rather than if you had big chunks, until you bite into those chunks, you won't really get it. And I feel like celery is probably one of the non-negotiables when it comes to aromatics. And then outside of that, I mean, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to use a shallot here today. You could add in, sometimes I'll add in carrots, you know, regular onion, like a white onion or a red onion. You know, really any aromatic vegetable. You could add in garlic if you wanted to do like a garlicky tuna salad. Any aromatic's going to work. Just depends on kind of what you're in the mood for. Okay, and then I'm going to match the size of the celery for the shallot. Going to get this outer layer off. If I can get this off. I'm just mutilating it at this point. All right, whatever. It's fine, it's good enough. And then this is another topic I need to talk about at some point. Ever since making that onion deep dive video, I have been using shallots more and more and more. They've definitely supplanted just regular onion use for me. Like anytime I'm thinking I want an onion, I kind of just start using shallot more and more. And it's kind of that, like, it's hard to describe shallots because they're more intense but also lighter in some ways, like less sulfury, but more intense in other ways, which I really, really like. So this is gonna really let that kind of shine a little bit more. So I've probably got, I would say, 1 part of celery there and then about a half part of shallot. If you were using onion, you could probably do 1 to 1. You know, I think a half part shallot is gonna be plenty here. And then I've got a couple of, these are just like small dill pickles. Any type of pickle you wanna use, you could use sweet and sour or sour pickles, sweet pickles, bread and butter, you know, whatever you wanna use. Again, all we're trying to do is just kind of match that smaller cut. And then obviously a lot of tuna salad will use, you know, relish. Same idea here, just these are not as sweet. You know, relish typically I think is a little sweeter. I'm pretty sure relish usually has some sugar added. It's definitely sweeter than straight pickles. Okay, so I'm gonna slide this over here. And we got our aromatics done. So that was tip 1 down, kind of get them all the same size. Now tip 2, again, most recipes will say just, you know, completely drain out your, you know, your tuna wateriness right away. And different cans of tuna have more water to them. It kind of just depends. I've found that I think the skipjack does tend to have a little bit more water, especially when they're the chunk light. So I think you do want to get rid of it, but we're gonna keep hold of this and maybe add it back in at the end. You know, some people like a drier tuna salad, some people like a wetter tuna salad. So I'm gonna drain this off, but gonna keep it, and then we can add a little bit back in just to kind of dial in the texture. Okay, so we got the beautiful white solid albacore, and then the chunk light, also known as skipjack. And you can see the moisture kind of sticks into this chunk light a little bit more. But that's okay. Like I said, you can dry this out as much as you want to. Keep it more on the liquidy side. We're gonna find that balance. Okay, so in goes can number 1. And I should have got out this spatula. And then can number 2. And again, there's still some water in there, but that's perfectly fine. I like mine kind of in the middle. I don't want it too wet, but I definitely don't want it really, really dry. Then, I don't know what tip this is on, but I like to break up all the little pieces in there and kind of get them pretty, again, I like it all kind of uniform when it comes to a tuna salad, especially for a sandwich. You know, you can make it chunky, and it's just kind of a textural choice. It depends on what you're looking for. And then, yeah, flavor and aroma-wise, as we've kind of talked about, this gives you that in-between where it's going to have, like the skipjack is going to be a little bit of the fishiness, which if you like that, great. If you don't, then probably don't use skipjack. And then albacore is much, much milder. So this mix of the two, I find, is a nice balance. Like I kind of like that, like a little bit of fishiness in like a pure chunk light tuna salad. But I'm going to add some more strongly flavored ingredients, so they're going to kind of stand up to this one-to-one mix. Okay, so we're going to come in with all of our aromatics here. A little piece of pickle. Okay, give that a quick stir. And right now this is pretty dry. Obviously we haven't added any mayo in, and we have our tuna liquid there as well. And then this is where you got to make a choice. Like, there's not really any way around it. More mayo is going to make your tuna salad taste a whole lot better. If you're trying to make a healthy version, you've just got to find that point where, you know, you're kind of good with it. So I think this is 12 ounces, or no, sorry, 24 ounces. So what would that be in grams? Like 600 or 700 or something like that. So I'm going to start out with like I'm going to do 120 to start. And just see where we're at. You can always add more, you can use less. Again, this is much about your personal decision. The ones at the deli counters, I guarantee you, they're using quite a bit of mayo, and that is likely one of the big reasons why it tastes better. They're definitely not skimping on the mayo, at least like you would at home. Okay, that I think is a pretty solid ratio. And then I do recommend kind of going in this order if you're making your own version that you want it. You're not following a recipe exactly. So mix your tuna and your aromatics, then mix the mayo. Then now we can balance everything. So I've got celery seed, I've got salt, I've got a little bit of MSG, I've got my black pepper, and I have my little extra tuna juice. This definitely needs a little bit of salt, but not much. I mean, the tuna itself does already have some salt in there. We're gonna go with a nice little sprinkle of celery seed, which This is a nice, nice addition. So it's gonna be 3 grams of celery seed. And then we'll probably do about 20, 25 cranks of black pepper, which will probably be 2 or 3 grams worth. Something like that. Again, a little bit of MSG, completely optional. You'd use maybe like a splash of soy sauce might be interesting. You know, some kind of sauce or something to give you a little bit of that umami flavor. A little bit of sugar too. Some people like theirs on the sweeter side. And then I'm just going to give this a little bit of our tuna juice. Let's give it a stir. So hopefully you can see that the aromatics evenly split in there. We've got the celery seed. You can see that black pepper, all kind of broken down from a tuna perspective. This actually tastes quite good right now, but really one of the biggest differences between making tuna at home versus getting like it out at a deli and getting a sandwich is they've typically made their tuna salad and it's kind of sat and rested and all those flavors just meld a little bit together, versus typically we make tuna salad quickly and immediately use it. And even though this tastes really good, it's gonna taste a little bit better if it just sits in the fridge for a couple of hours. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and then we'll come back and make a tuna melt.
So I let the tuna sit in the fridge overnight and then grabbed it out, and I always recommend giving it a little final taste for any adjustments. Then I toasted a couple of pieces of bread underneath the broiler, then flipped those over and added the cheese to the inside to let those melt in the oven as well. You could use American, cheddar, or really whatever cheese you want. Then once they're melted, add on a hefty amount of that tuna, top it up with the other piece of bread, slice it in half, and let's devour.
This right here, pretty good looking tuna melt to me. Let's give it a taste. That right there is kind of my ideal tuna melt. Like you get the tuna hit right away from kind of that skipjack, but then it quickly mellows out and then you get that shallot, you get the celery seed, you get the little bite of pickle in there, the celery, you know, toasted bread, cheese, what's not to like. So whether you make this version like I did and mix your own or test out any range of canned tuna out there, that's gonna wrap it up for me in this one. I will catch you all in the next one. Peace, y'all.